Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather and Fireball drops balls. This morning, okay, last one. We are going to talk about Gone with the Wind. Here is my copy. As you know, I didn't like this cover. I still don't like this cover, even though it's the original. I finished this book. I'm recording this the 11th. I finished it Friday the 8th. It is a reread for me. I read it decades ago. And how it hit me this reread is very different than how it hit me back in the day. So I'm going to summarize the story in case you have never seen the movie or read the book. It tells the story of Scarlett O'Hara, and it begins right at the beginning of the Civil War, and it ends during Reconstruction, the latter portion of Reconstruction. Post-Civil War takes place entirely in Georgia, and this novel is not what you think it is. It is not what all the negative reviews are saying. It is an American classic for a reason, and it should never come off of that list. So let's talk about the difficult stuff. The book was published in 1936, and Mitchell grew up in a Catholic family in the Atlanta area of Georgia, and she grew up visiting with relatives and family friends who survived the Civil War and Reconstruction. She grew up seeing Sherman's ghosts, and all of that living memory was part of her foundation growing up. And this is very much a Catholic novel. Catholicism is represented in here very well. But what this book gets so much undeserved hate for in present day world is the use of one word in particular, and its depiction of slavery. Mind you, those two things are not the point of this novel, and they are a very small portion of this novel. Did they exist in the Civil War South in Georgia? They did. Would they have been a living memory of Mitchell's family and friends as she was growing up? It absolutely would have. Was it horrible? Yes. Did it exist solely in America in the past? No. Every nation, every country on earth has a slavery past. And it is still going on today. And to simply take what is historical fact and try to bend it into something it wasn't is nonsense. And to gloss over it as it being non-horrific is also nonsense. It is horrific in the book. It was horrific in reality. Is it the focus of this book? It is absolutely not the focus of this book. It is in there because if it had been left out, it would have been not just inauthentic, it would not have would not have reflected actual reality. And this is historical fiction. And historically, these things happened. And you can't turn a blind eye, and you can't erase them from history because they don't fit your modern day ethics and ethos. And moving on. So, it is far more accurate to say that the most honest way to discuss this book is its classism. This is a novel of classism. From the get-go, from the opening chapter, it is very clear that Scarlett is in the upper class of Georgian society, and she freely, and her family and her friends and her social circle all talks about poor white trash. And they have far more disdain and lack of patience for the poor white trash in their community than they do for their slaves. And this is not excusing slavery. Before you accuse me of that, that is not what this is. It is an honest assessment of what is going on in this book. When the book opens, Scarlett is 16. She is a teenager. Any modern day teenager thrust into Scarlett's shoes would collapse under the weight and the pressure of everything she endures. So she's 16, the book opens, she's going to a ball or a picnic at the neighboring plantation, and she's learned that the supposed love of her life is set to announce his engagement to another young lady she can't stand, to be polite about it. This is the first time she ever meets Rhett Butler, and the picnic is interrupted by news that they're now at war. Thus opens the story, and she, as the book opens, is incredibly spoiled. Just like nauseatingly spoiled. She, never does anything for herself. She only listens to her mother and Mamie, and she treats her sisters horribly. She has her father wrapped around her middle finger. She is an outrageous flirt with all of the local boys. And, she is, in modern lingo, she would end up being an Instagram influencer who has a perfect life for the general public, and reality is very different. Scarlett is also, from the get-go, Fireball, no. She does not want to think about anything that taxes her wee brain. And you get the impression very early on that she does not have two brain cells that function. She is, obsessed with looks. She is obsessed with, getting married and living a comfortable life that she has always lived. No, go lay down. And it just, you love to hate her. She impulsively gets married out of spite to a man she does not, or boy she does not love. He goes off to war. He dies of a fever, which is her everlasting shame. And she's soon pregnant. At 17, she gives birth to a child. She, by this time, shortly after she has the baby, who is a little boy named Wade, she moves to Atlanta to live with the relatives of her deceased spouse, and one of those relatives just happens to be the young lady who married the supposed love of her life, Melanie, who married Ashley. And we are still in the Victorian era in England, and those mourning customs have invaded the South, and she is forced into black, and she is sidelined, and she's 17. She's 17. She has a baby she doesn't really love. She has a baby she doesn't understand. She isn't coping with that well. In fact, has as little to do with the infant as possible. What she really wants to do is, once again, be the belle of the ball. Be 17 and not have responsibilities. And she is forced into, nursing work and sitting on the sidelines at balls. And she is bored and very frustrated. And you see her begin to slowly grow up. And as she goes through the war in Atlanta, and she deals with loss and fear and the deprivation that comes with all of that, we get to the actual heart of the novel, which is, this is a novel about politics, plain and simple. And you don't really know that until just about halfway through, because most of the novel is not about the Civil War. Most of the novel is the after effect and how she deals with it and what goes on. And there is the, flight from Atlanta as Sherman is, marching through, and she lands back at Tara, which is the family plantation. She discovers that her mother has just died. Her father has lost his senses from grief, and she is suddenly responsible for herself, Melanie, who's just had a baby and is not handling that well at all physically, her little sisters, the slaves that have stayed. She is 19, going on 20 at this point, and all of a sudden, all of these people are depending on her. Union soldiers are still roaming the countryside, burning plantations, pillaging food without a care for the Southerners whose whole world has been rocked. And she starts to grow up very quickly, and she suddenly realizes that the thing she loves most in the world is that red clay in Georgia and the land she never thought she loved, and suddenly it's the most important thing. And she scrambles and she finds a way to feed her family with the help of the former slaves and her sisters, who are even more hateful than the Scarlet. And soon enough, Reconstruction comes, and life gets incredibly more difficult. By the end of the war, the South in particular was starving. Food was very scarce. They certainly weren't getting, 3 squares a day. And Reconstruction made it that much more difficult. And we have somehow, as a nation, whitewashed the horrors of Reconstruction and carpetbaggers and scallywags and the breakdown of the social contracts for human decency went out the window for, close to a decade in the South. And there were atrocities committed by the victors of the North upon the losers of the South. And while you may say that is justified, nothing justifies some of the horrors committed during Reconstruction. Just it doesn't explain it. And now we get to the reason this book is so hated by the modern day left and Democrats. And I will read you a very specific passage in the book. I will set it up. Scarlett has taken in one of the traveling poor white trash that she never would have considered prior to the war, and he is helping her on, at Tara, and he has told her that there are exorbitant taxes due under the Reconstruction government. And so his name is Will, and Will is talking to Scarlett. And they're talking about how to pay the taxes, they will be more than happy to take Tara away to pay off the taxes. And Scarlett is dumbfounded. So Will is talking. His mild pale eyes showed more hate and bitterness than she thought possible. Oh, couldn't they? Well, they could, and they will, and they'll likely do it. And they'll likely doing it. Miss Scarlett, the country's gone plumb to hell. If you pardon me, those carpetbaggers and scallywags can vote, and most of us Democrats can't. Can't no Democrat in this state vote if he was on the tax books for more than $2,000.65. That lets out folks like your pa and Mr. Tarleton and the McRaes and the Fontaine boys. Can't nobody vote who was a colonel and over in the war. And Miss Scarlett, I bet this state's got more colonels than any other state in the Confederacy. And can't nobody vote who held office under the Confederate government. That lets out everybody from the notaries to the judges. And the woods are full of folks like that. Fact is, the way the Yankees have framed up that amnesty oath, can't nobody who was somebody before the war vote at all. Not the smart folk, not the quality folk, not the rich folk. And there you have it. This book lays out political history, and it's very clear. Southern Democrats couldn't vote. And Republican Yankees could. Southern Democrats were responsible for the establishment of the KKK. And the Yankees were not. Southern Democrats were responsible for, the wanting to bring back the old way of life, and the Yankees were not. The Yankees, on the other hand, aka the Republicans, were responsible for the, Reconstruction politics. Yankees were responsible for forcing Fireball, last one. The right for black men to vote down the throats of Southerners. And when they did it in Georgia, Fireball, no. So when they did it in Georgia, they were so incensed that the first time it failed in Georgia, that when it does pass, the Republicans, I told you no, last one. The Republicans basically ship black men all over the state of Georgia to vote multiple times in the same election. So they were, stuffing the ballot box repeatedly. Republicans were more than happy to be brutal to any Southerner, rich, poor. If you were white and you so much as looked at a black person wrong, you could find yourself in, military jail for an unspecified period of time. Both sides did horrible things. Both sides handled the conclusion of the war horribly and its aftermath. And this book lays it all out. Does it absolve the South? No. Does Scarlett really, at her core, care? She absolutely does not care. She does not care about the politics. She does not care about who is free and who is not. She does not care who can vote and who cannot. What Scarlett cares about is having enough food on the table to feed her family and having enough money in the bank that no one can make her hungry again. And no one can starve that she loves, because she witnessed it. She doesn't care about the rest of it. This isn't a novel about slaves and glorifying slavery and glorifying the antebellum South. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Is it there? Sure, to some extent. Is it the focus of the book? It is absolutely not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is politics. The focus of the book is her struggle to mature and grow up and face reality. The book opens up and she is 16, and when the book concludes, she is 28 years old. And in those 12 years, she is married 3 times. She has 3 children. She buries 2 husbands. She buries 1 child. She lives through the horrible deprivation as the Civil War drags on. She lives through Reconstruction. She saves the family plantation. She feeds all the people under her care. She discovers that she has a business mind. She owns multiple businesses. She does not care 2 flips what society thinks of her, because she owns businesses and she's going to proactively be involved. She doesn't care if society thinks less of her, because she needs money in the bank. She is fearless. Is it mature fearless? No, she still has a lot of growing up to do, and she's starting to come into her own as a woman as the book concludes. But this is not a novel about racism. It isn't a novel about, horrible acts of one human being against another human being. This is a novel about a young woman who has her entire world turned upside down, and her inner fortitude to battle through that, to learn from it, and to mature. And quite frankly, I don't think, what are you silly gooses over there doing? Any modern child, I don't care if they're 16 or 28, would be capable. No, go lay down. No, go lay down. Fireball. Settle. No, I don't want your ball. No. Would be capable of staging a comeback like Scarlett did. Do I think this book deserves to be read? I absolutely do. I think if you don't pick up Gone with the Wind, you are doing yourself a disservice. Is Margaret Mitchell a raging racist? She is absolutely not. She's absolutely not a raging racist. She is... She wrote an authentic novel of Georgian experience during the Civil War. Do you have to like Scarlett? No. Is Scarlett the most lovable heroine you'll ever come across? She is absolutely not. Is she as bad as everyone makes her out to be? No, she's absolutely not. She has this inner fortitude that is lacking in so many characters of modern fiction, and she does some amazing growth over the 1,000+ pages of this book. Is she the most sympathetic heroine? No, but she is up there. For me, she's absolutely up there. Her self-awareness is both lacking and very present. She goes through some of the most horrific things in life, and she never wavers. She, does what she has to do to get forward. Get through it, move forward, keep people fed, get taxes paid, and she is still a work in progress as the book concludes. She's 28. I would love to, see Scarlett at, 48 and where she stands at 48. So, do I think this is going to be a very popular take on Scarlett O'Hara? No. Or the book? No. In fact, I expect most people are not going to be of the same opinion, and that's fine. But it doesn't change the fact that this is very much a political novel. It is very much a reflection of the realities of the Civil War and who did what to whom on a grand scale. Neither side was Fireball. I said no. Go lay down. No. Neither side was innocent. Neither side is free from the stain of the actions their geographical location undertook, and this novel does not get the attention it deserves today. It is beautifully written. It is one of the best character works I've ever read. The amount of character growth and development and maturity in this book is astounding. And not just with Scarlet, with the side characters who are, much more than side characters. The very complex relationships that develop in this book over time are a beauty to behold, and that never gets talked about. The relationship between Melanie and Scarlet is often overlooked, but it is a relationship of jealousy and love and resentment and forgiveness and gratitude, and it adequately holds up a mirror to what female friendship is. That's always overlooked. And then there's her relationships with men. Her first husband, which was just, a marriage of spite on Scarlet's behalf with consequences. There's her second marriage, in which she absolutely did wrong by her little sister for reasons that make absolute sense in Scarlet's perspective, but sullied her relationship with her sister forever. And that had fallout. And then there's her relationship with Rhett Butler, and they are very much the male and female versions of their archetypes, and how they relate to one another and how they interact is one of those defining moments of the book, and it begins in the very first chapter and it carries through. And this is a very complex novel. It is very approachable. It is very readable. It is very... I couldn't put it down. Once I had the brain capacity to sit down and read it, I couldn't put it down. And it was a struggle every time I had to put it down because, real life intruded in my reading schedule. It is a novel that you will love to hate, and you will read the first chapter and the first paragraph you will fall in love with her writing style, and you will then run across the first passage of dialect in the book, and you will have to read it a couple of times until you get used to reading the dialect. But dialect in this book plays a very important point of differentiation, and it's throughout the book. It isn't a predominant part of the book, but it is throughout the book. You cannot talk about Gone with the Wind and go into it thinking you're going to fall in love with the characters and you're going to root for them, because as the book opens, Scarlet in particular is just this spoiled, flirtatious, self-centered, self-absorbed empty-headed child who believes the world revolves around her. The men in her sphere are spoiled. Think the moon and stars of Scarlet, even though she treats them all poorly, and they are empty-headed too. So as the book opens up, we have a bimbo and a bunch of male bimbos surrounding her, and you are immediately like, this does not comport with, books recently published. And it doesn't, and it shouldn't, and it's a beautiful thing. And all I can tell you is keep reading, because it gets so much better. And it gets better quickly. And while the Civil War is the opening backdrop, it isn't the primary focus of the book at all. It isn't the there are no, battle scenes. There is no mention of the Emancipation Proclamation. The assassination of Lincoln doesn't come in. There is not a lot of talk of the Confederate government. Scarlet has absolutely zero patience for anything having to do with Confederate politics, and she is tired from the opening chapter of men discussing war and the potential of war, and then once war comes, she doesn't want to hear about it. She's tired of nursing, and it is a novel of the woman's experience of war. It's the best way I know how to put it. What happens on the home front? What's left behind for women and children and those too old to go to war? What happens when you don't hear for your loved ones? What happens when the state in which you have been born and raised and have never left, or maybe you've gone to Charleston on vacation but you've always come back, gets invaded by the opposing side? What happens when the city in which you are sheltering and you are raising your young son, and you have lived most of the war in, is suddenly being shelled and then invaded and burned to the ground? What happens when the food dries up? All of those things are a vital part of this book. And then what happens when the invading army has won the war and they are now in charge of rebuilding? What happens to everything you've loved? How do you save it? How do you protect those you love? This is very much a woman's story. It is very much not, I would not call this a romance. I would not call this a novel of war. I would absolutely classify this as political historical fiction. I loved this book when I first read it. I love it even more now. I think Scarlett O'Hara is an amazing character. I feel nothing but compassion for her. I cannot imagine living what she's lived through, or what she lived through in the book, and handling it with as much fortitude. And every time Scarlett gets scared or she's facing something new and she doesn't know how to handle it, she tells herself, I'll think of that tomorrow. I just got to get through today, but I will think about the big thing tomorrow. Does she ever sit down and think about the big thing? No. She isn't that self-reflective yet. But she gets through what she needs to get through, even if she doesn't sit down and think about the big thing. And I'm sorry, but we need more people who just get through things rather than overthinking everything. So, would I recommend Gone with the Wind? I would absolutely recommend Gone with the Wind. You don't have to love it. You don't have to like Scarlett. You don't have to approve of the life of the American South in the in the era leading up to the Civil War. You can cheer for the Yankees all you want, but this is a novel I think most Americans need to read. This is a novel I think most of the Western world needs to read. In this book of the Civil War and Reconstruction era, you can see a lesson from the past that the Western world failed to learn as World War I rolls around and post-armistice in World War I, the repercussions that were exercised on Germany were echoes of Reconstruction, and they had they had far more devastating effects as World War II happened. But you can see that echo from the American Reconstruction. You can see it in Europe in 1917 through, beginning of 1930. It's all there. It happens time and time again in history because we don't learn our lessons. We try to block out the past and pretend it didn't happen and we're so much better now. And that's not the truth. It will never be the truth because humans don't work that way. And if you read the book for what it is and don't bring your own biases into it, it is an amazing literary work. And it should not be suppressed. It should be taught. It should be widely read. And I will absolutely always recommend this book. So, have you read Gone with the Wind? Please leave a comment down below. A respectful, non-hateful comment. Hateful and disrespectful comments will be deleted. And let me know what you think. I appreciate you watching, and leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub. What are you doing?